Good afternoon, good afternoon. It is wonderful to see you all. Isn't it incredibly hot? And who has said that in the last 15 minutes? We really can't complain about it. It's a beautiful space. Thank you so much for having us, to the Brand Innovator team and the Mastercard team. And if there's one thing you remember, it's actually DEPT, not department, which is where I work. I'm Isabel Perry. I am, as was introduced, the head of strategy at DEPT. And what that means is I spend a lot of my time thinking about new paths to growth in a world with AI. And I think that the signals piece of this is so essential to informing any decision that a business is making in today's world. So this is the panel: Agents, Signals, and Self-Driving Funnel. And I hope that at the end of the next 40 minutes, what you take away is how signals are fueling AI-driven growth, why brand and brand narratives matter more in an AI web, and the new drivers of brand reach. And we have a very dazzling panel that's going to just tell you everything you need to know. So this is the last panel you need to attend this week. So what's very interesting is we have Lindsey and Shiv, who are both sort of consulting directly with CMOs on extremely upstream strategic questions, both looking at how AI is changing marketing, but also the product side of things. Then we have Amelia, who is setting the WP agent strategy for internal and obviously external as well, and getting into the real weeds of sort of agentic skills and shaping everything that WPP is doing there. And Susan, who I think has modestly not said, but I understand, has basically been behind a lot of the biggest and most strategic moves that Mastercard has made in advising companies how to sort of win in a world of loyalty. So welcome. Thank you for joining. And I'd like to open the question, or open the floor, with a question around, in today's world, we are absolutely inundated with information, AI slop. There is more sort of pseudo-intelligence coming at us than ever before. And a hot take from all four of you, please. How do you separate the signal from the noise? And let's start with you, Lindsey.
Oh, goodness, the first one. Hi, everyone. I think, right now, this is one of the biggest conversations. As you were saying, Shiv and I perhaps work a little bit more upstream, thinking about brand planning, but also shaping the new role of the CMO, which moves much deeper into actually thinking about products. What are we making so that we can market and sell them? And I think we've really been, sifting through massive amounts of data over the past year to understand what are the right things that we should be creating. And what I've really seen is that if you haven't cleaned that data and you haven't really thought about how you're going after it and getting it, then all of that is just noise. So training how we're thinking about things and really having a strategy for how we're doing that is helping, especially when it means it's not just developing a marketing campaign, it's about really thinking about the products we as a business need to create and ship.
Take it away, Amelia.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I think it's really tempting with Agentic to start with the task. When agents are defined by the action that they take, you can easily start with the task and then the tech in order to deliver it. But actually, I challenge everybody to start with a decision, because brands don't grow just by executing tasks. They grow by making good decisions about which problem to solve, who to target, which creative idea to back, how to allocate budget across channels. So start with a decision, then think through what data you need to make that decision, and then can and should an agent play a role within that decision. That helps you build really well.
So you've both sort of said, ultimately, the signal should be set by the strategy up front, so you're asking the right question. Okay. Shiv, what about you?
So I'd love to build on that, and I hope I'm holding the mic the right way. That's what's making me most nervous today. I think we're really in an interesting moment where we're still very much human-led and human-first in the way we think about AI. And whether we like it or not, I think that's going to fast change in the next couple of years. And one example about that is we're spending this year quite a bit of time talking about AI slop. But here's the secret. There's a hell of a lot of human slop out there. More than that, what matters is we're fast moving into a world, give it 6 months, 12 months at the most, where differentiating between what's human created and what's AI created is going to be practically impossible. And on top of that, this week we're all talking about creators and influencers here at Cannes. We'll be talking a lot more about AI creators and AI influencers next year, and whether we can even differentiate them as well. So there's change afoot. I would humbly suggest it's more dramatic, more frightening than any of us are probably ready for, but it's the future.
So you're saying separate the signal from the noise with a view to the future?
Is impossible.
Okay, just to clarify. Susan, what about you?
I think it's interesting that we're all talking about the procedures, the processes, the things around the analytics, because I think we've got the analytics and the AI to find the signal. So I'm going to take it in a little more operational direction and say, well, the signal's important. The ability to react to the signal and have the infrastructure that connects the signal to an outcome that benefits the consumer is actually really the most important thing. And if you're able to have that whole connected journey, that whole connected infrastructure, and then measure the impact, how well that signal worked, then you're creating new signals with the results of what you're measuring. So operations are absolutely critical here.
I think that feels like it needs a frame as catchy as the signal from the noise. So if anyone thinks of that by the end of the panel, let me know. You look like you might have wanted to come in.
Yeah, the journey work. As many years as we've all been in this business, it's the dream to have that connected. Hopefully we can start doing that more, but it is super challenging, right? And hopefully what we're doing now is setting up these tools to be able to enable that. But I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a new brand and we're like, we don't know our customer, we don't know our journey. I'm like, well, your marketing budget is $1 billion a year. What have we been doing? It's just, we're so disparate across how we work on the brand side and client side, agency side as well, that I just think there's such an interesting way of starting to move things together so that we can harness what you're talking about.
And do you think that's one of the biggest challenges facing brands as they approach their growth at the moment?
Totally. Our structure is keeping us from success 100%. You can't get the tools in, you can't get the teams in, the levels are issues. You will hear from a lot of CMOs on panels recently, we just need to burn everything down and restart. And I know that sounds really aggressive, but that is what is happening.
Did you say burn the house down?
Burn the house down. That scares the out of everyone, right? It's really scary. But how do you build? Do you build on a faulty foundation? Do you tear everything down? Shiv, I know you have thoughts on this, I can tell. How do you get to that? That is a very hard decision. And I think at a senior level, we have plans, but we have to bring the people along with us, and it's very challenging. Just
go for it, Shiv.
In real talk.
I want to violently agree with your violent metaphor, if that's anything. So I live in the Bay Area. I have a lot of friends and a lot of professional relationships in the tech community over there, and I also invest in a lot of startups. So I'm very familiar with the notion of how you build an AI native company and even an AI native function. So Lindsey, just to build on everything that you're saying, it's a very different way of working. It's a very different level of productivity and output by a factor of 10, 20, or 50% greater than what we're used to in large marketing functions. And it prevents a huge challenge because it's nearly as if these startups have a unique arbitrage opportunity to grow and scale much quicker with much, much fewer people because they don't have those historic processes, those historic assumptions, those historic ways of working, those historic planning cycles that don't mesh with an agentic AI era. And I think we're going to see more and more of that tension, a tension that a CEO will not understand, but will be incredibly hard for a CMO to grapple with because they have to worry about both sides.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said. And the one thing I will add is that I think there is an imperative to move as quickly as possible. And the reason is what we are starting to see is as companies are leaning into AI and agentic, they're starting to implement it, but on a foundation that's fragmented and faulty. And so what's going to end up happening is there's going to be a tremendous amount of waste if we're all building AI in these fragmented point solutions, but they don't ultimately create that end-to-end capability we need.
Okay, so I have a more difficult question. Do any of you have opinions about what the biggest problems that clients are approaching with their growth that some of you might disagree with? Because we've just had 3 in agreement with each other. Any controversial takes?
I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it probably is a slightly different lens, which is brand predisposition is as important as it's ever been in driving purchase decisions, but brand trust and differentiation is at a 20-year low. And I think we have a real risk of AI perpetuating that. We have to ask different questions of it in order to get different answers. We can't build growth and advantageous strategies, creative and execution for our clients if we are making the same decisions as everybody else. So yes, foundations and data are critically important, but we also have to be thinking through how we are using that in different ways in order to drive growth.
So that is a great point. And I don't think there will be much disagreement. But I suppose building on that, if we agree that signals are sort of the most valuable data, which is sort of indicating where the intent or the interest or the behavior is going, Susan, which signals actually matter? And how do you see different companies activating across them, on them, with them?
So, I think the most valuable signals are based in actual behavior as well as context, because those are the things that you need to really understand intent.
And can you just build out what you mean by behavior and context?
Well, behavior is, what are people buying? What are people, surfing? What are they looking at? What are they, their actual actions? And context is very time-driven. Real-time signals are absolutely incredible, because if you can match up intent and need in the exact moment, then you're delivering the right thing to the consumer at the right time through the right channel, and you get the best customer experience and obviously the best benefit to the advertiser and the publisher. But what I also will add on this, because it's something we focus on quite a bit at Mastercard, is that as you're building out the ability to do that, because you do need infrastructure to deliver that, you've got to start with privacy frameworks, security, and trust from the very beginning. Mastercard's business starts and ends with trust. And so whether it is our payment network or our commerce media, it's very much ingrained in us that, that is the most important thing. And I'm bringing it back to signals, because I think some of the absolute most valuable signals come from consented consumer data, because they've given you, the ability to use their data. There's a value exchange there, but you can't separate that from privacy and trust.
Yeah, it's quite funny. How do you burn the house down without eroding your trust is not a question that is an easy answer. But Lindsey, when you're thinking about sort of, working very, very upstream, as we've talked about, what are the more macro environment signals which are shaping everything from marketing to also product strategy?
The macro signals that, it's interesting, marketing, I think I'm saying again, is taking a new seat at the table in terms of how we're looking at long-range planning as well as in the actual products that we're making. And that's fun, to be honest. See, we usually don't get that seat at the table, but it's really changing how we're thinking about what research we're learning and then bringing back as well, right? If you think about things like, is everyone using synthetic audiences? Okay, we're all using synthetic audiences, but how are you, if you were thinking about in that upstream, normally what I've seen on the marketing side is we're training it with RAG data to essentially think about consumer. How are we going after this consumer? How do you feel about us? How would these lines work? But on the product side,
I'm going to jump in. And could you possibly explain synthetic audiences in case not everyone on this side of the panel is also using them?
Artificial humans that we are talking to test everything with. And one of the things I think that's interesting is that we had to learn recently to actually feed it. We're feeding it with the wrong data when we're starting to think about product innovation. It needs to be fed SKUs and understanding like an agent might think as well versus just consumer analysis, right? And hopefully I'm making sense.
So you're building synthetic audiences of agents as well as humans?
Who's doing that? I haven't seen a lot of that. I think internally, from the marketing side, we were always thinking about it's consumer and how do we get the message out, and do they like this creative work, and how will they behave? But now in this new place, I'm realizing much more that we have to train them and think about it in different ways, and think about that audience actually in a new way. And on the marketing side, of course, you could be thinking about that too. But how are we training the data again? How are we thinking about it? And what are the things that we can extract? If we're not training synthetic audiences like they are in Agent, I think we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle. And I bet you do that very well.
Yeah, I just build on that. So much of the content that's available online today is built for humans, but in future it will be agent meet agent. And so not necessarily building synthetic agents, I'm sort of synthetic in the first place, but certainly testing through how an agent would respond to another agent within the purchase journey is absolutely right.
And perhaps building on that, how are you helping brands influence, speak, connect, equip to those agents?
Good question. So we talk about systems of influence, which is thinking about earned, shared, owned, amplified by paid. So very much thinking influence first in terms of who you're influencing, both in terms of the human and agent. Agents are almost the ultimate rational actors. So how you cut through to an agent is quite different to the empathy and emotion that you need to build as well in order to cut through and talk to humans. A huge amount of work thinking about the entire influence system beyond humans.
You know, and just to build on that, I think we're entering a fascinating chapter. Well, we're firstly already in one where all of a sudden how you think about your website and how it needs to have answers and deep content so that it's readable and considered valuable for the large language models is fresh. I mean, I grew up in a world where website mattered a lot, and then social media mattered, and the website folks were sort of the forgotten stepchildren, but they're coming back into vogue. And it's interesting already today, the brands that are doing the best in the large language models are the ones that already behave like deep answer websites. So you think a TurboTax, a Lego, a Chewy, those sort of brands. Where it gets more interesting though, and just to build on what you're sharing, Amelia, is we're now moving in a direction where the entire internet is going to bifurcate. And by bifurcate, I mean, on the one hand, there'll be the internet we all live and know and enjoy, human-centered, human-driven, human-created, for humans, that will pull at our heartstrings, that will have pricing value, all of those pieces. And then there will be that headless internet, which is the agent-to-agent conversations and transactions, which will be beneath the surface, not visible, and where the majority, I believe, of e-commerce transactions will take place.
I totally agree, and would love to speak to any brands in this room about that. But what I would also like to do is also make sure that we're giving everyone in this room an opportunity to ask questions. So after the next question, I'm going to ask if anyone wants to put their hand up to just take some questions halfway through. Shiv, just sticking with you for a minute. I mean, to do well in the sort of the world that you've just set out, you have to have a hell of a lot of good guardrails in place. So I'd be really, really interested in how you see people approaching their governance and guardrails and the security side of this. Or not just security, but like the brand governance as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So, you know, I built the first part of my career was at PepsiCo in consumer marketing, and then I moved over to financial services, and I was at Visa, and then I was the chief marketing officer at LendingTree, a very large financial services marketplace in the States, $700 million annual spend, and I was running a large team. And I used to think that in financial services, my hands were tied. It was nowhere near as much fun as CPG. You know, I could move at the pace of culture. I hung out with a lot of cool people, and everybody laughed at my jokes because of my role. The interesting thing is, guardrails and governance is incredibly difficult, but the ones who are the furthest along in this realm all the regulated industries, all the financial services, all the insurance industries, all the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry. So they already have a leg up. The big challenge, though, is we can do however much. And there's, I've written a book and I have like 3 chapters on governance. Thanks to you also, because you contributed to it. But the biggest challenge is when it comes to governance, so much is dependent on the large language models, on what Anthropic says and does, what OpenAI says and does, what Gemini says and does. And that's out of all of our hands. And we have to depend on them.
I should just do a plug for Shiv's book. He wrote AI for Dummies for Marketers. AI for Marketing Dummies.
Thank you for the official shout out. Marketing with AI for Dummies, and it's 4th edition, 5 language translations.
Wonderful. We love it. We love a book. Are there any questions in the audience before I go on to our next questions? I'm very disappointed, but I'll keep going. Oh yeah, we have a question.
Oh, I have a microphone for you. There you go.
One of the things we're seeing in our work is brand atrophy.
Oh, sorry, name and company, or what is your work?
Leslie Zane, CEO of Triggers, a growth accelerating agency.
Great.
One of the things we're seeing throughout the Fortune 500 is tremendous brand atrophy. The messages that marketers are creating are not even making it into people's minds. And I think there's 2 reasons for that. One is digital fragmentation, where we're constantly putting out more and more content, but it's not consistent. And consumers are not getting a convergent understanding of the brand. So the brands are literally disappearing. And the second thing is that marketers think that the consumers need something new instead of kind of consistently telling the story and letting new generations of people know the great things about the brand that came, that historically came before that. In the age of AI, this is just going to accelerate. So what can we do to stop this brand atrophy? Because if the brand atrophies, we literally have no value to promote. So I'd love to hear.
Thank you very much for that question. Are there any other questions? Because I just want to gather a few and then we can address them. Okay, in which case, would anyone like to take that one? Yeah, please go for it.
I'll start with that because I could not agree with you more. It is actually a real wake-up call moment for brands because as you said, AI is going to just accelerate this. So they have to stand for something. And if you think about, how consumers interact with brands is changing dramatically, but what drives loyalty is not changing at all. It comes down to what kind of value does it provide for me? What kind of experience does it provide for me? What emotional connection do I have to it? And so brands are going to have to really look at that and reestablish what branding means. And the other piece of it is, as Shiv was saying, being discoverable requires you to be consistent and clear in what your branding is. And so that's something that brands have to do as well. Otherwise, they are really going to be a threat. This is one of the biggest concerns that our customers bring up to us. But the reality is it's actually a moment of massive opportunity. They just have to do it the right way and not be lazy about what their brand stands for, and the value and the experience is the other piece. Also because large language models really rely on reviews. And so, you've got to have great reviews. So all of that has to really be addressed.
I have lots of thoughts. I'll start with a few. I think CMOs are scared right now. They're not spending as much time on brand. They're spending a lot of time on trying to get smart and figure out what to do with tools. We all have access to the same tools. We could all create the same things right now if we wanted to activate that. But did everyone look at the work this year? Have we gone and seen the work? The best work I'm seeing are print ads. That's the work that's standing out. And the ads that are great, or the pieces of work that are craft, are from the brands that we know have a Bible and someone guiding them that are so true to their core. This is what we are. Everybody knows it on a page. Each thing we do ladders up to boom, boom, and boom. We have a point of view, a tone of voice. Dunkin' Donuts work, which I saw this morning, fabulous. I think it won a Grand Prix. maybe, or something close. That work was just, it's perfect. It's spot on. They have someone guiding that work. I think we have people who are nervous and are stretched by boards, no longer the CFO. It is the board talking to us all the time. They're doing deals with tech companies. They want us to do this. We're moving so fast. My biggest advice is the best value you'll get in archaic planning process, which are going on right now, is to pause, let things just go, get your team in a room and make sure everyone is clear on what that is, because now we have to train machines to know who we are. And if we don't know it and we don't tell it how to take risks, we're all just going to be doing the same work and all our brands are going to go back to beige.
And I want to bring Amelia in here because I think I imagine, well, I'd like to ask you about how you're working with businesses to help scale innovation. And I imagine being very true to who they are and knowing who they are is one part of it. But what else are you seeing as essential to that scale?
Yeah, I was going to echo that point as well and just say, Laura, who's in the audience, leads human AI strategy for us and has a brilliant saying, which is that AI amplifies what works in a business and it also makes what doesn't work worse. And getting the fundamentals right in terms of who you are and executing that consistently over time has honestly never been more important. And we see that playing out in the data in terms of the gap between consumer perception of brands and LLM or agentic perception of brands. And for us, again, it comes back to how are we using AI in a different way? So about half of AI use and knowledge work is analysis, summaries, synthesis. And you can certainly put all of your data and information into an LLM and ask for the top line analysis. But you actually have to think about how do I get 10, 20, 30% more richness out of this? Otherwise, I'm getting the same answer as everyone else, and we're going to do the same thing as everyone else.
And one quick thing to that. One of my favorite trainings happening from retailers is they are using videos from shoppers nonstop in the store, their team members, their customer service, and that is how they're training their LLMs. It's not PDFs. It's linking real video, real expression. When someone touches or looks at something, how do they say this looks fabulous? Because you can't convey that in a PDF brand book.
No, and you're basically, if you don't have differentiated data, knowledge or design in your agents, you're effectively outsourcing the work to the internet. And the internet is right about a lot of things, but it's also wrong about a lot of things that are worth being right about. So you need to be super careful about exactly what decisions you're outsourcing and what data is going to get you a better answer than somebody else.
So, Shiv, you're going to join in and please make a relatively punchy short comment. Just looking at the clock.
That's a tall
I know
order.
You can do it.
A tall order. So I think three things really matter, some of which we've already touched on. The first is you have to define your brand much, much more tightly than ever before. Otherwise, it turns beige. The second thing is we are in a funky time in that its expertise is not trusted anymore. And that creates all kinds of problems. It's really the death of expertise era. So you have to really depend on who are the new sources of truth. And then the third is, very directly to this question, if I were to answer in one word what the future is, I think it's micro-targeting with micro-creative. And the lesson I have is, I was with my son here yesterday, he's 17, we had traveled back from Asia, and he was like, oh, it's so good to be in France. And I was like, why? He was like, we were in India, there's no TikTok there, and he's like, the Instagram feed is nowhere near as good as the TikTok feed. That hyper-personalization is everything.
Yeah, and I was with Press Gazette on a lot of publishers on Monday, and one of the huge things that they're seeing is the nicheification of publications, or publishers, because of that. It gives a space for finding your audience and also for them brand partnerships in niche areas. Susan, I would like to spend a little bit of more time on the consolidation of essentially the customer journey. And I think that one of the things which is becoming apparent is that commerce will be both distributed and dynamic, and all brands need to rethink what it means to have an owned site or, a website, and there will be more places to convert. And how do you as a brand avoid feeling transactional in that new world?
So, I mean, again, I think it's a threat and an opportunity, and you have to approach it the right way. And getting back to what I said before, what really makes a customer loyal? It's those key fundamentals. And so agents and AI can actually help you do that better if you're doing a good job of getting the right signals, if you've got the technology and the infrastructure that can tie it all together. You can actually make a consumer feel more understood because you've delivered the right offer, the right ad in the right channel at the right time. And when it's really at its best, advertising becomes a utility. It's something consumers want. And that's going back to when I said we always focus on consent, because there's trust and value exchange when someone has given you that. So let me give you an example. You want advertising not to interrupt a moment, you want it to enhance a moment, extend a moment. And that's also where contextual information, like real time, is so important. So, when I fly home and I land at JFK and it's dinner time, the last thing in the world I want to think about is dinner. But wouldn't it be great if my rideshare app, as I get close to home, sends me an offer for a dinner, something to make my life easier? That actually makes me feel good, So it's advertising that is truly improving your life because it understands intent and context and is getting the right information and offer at the right time.
Great, love that. We all want better advertising in this room, so let's all work towards that. I would like to ask Shiv and Lindsey, and maybe you can respectively, is this conversation actually, you've kind of said it already, it's not a marketing problem, it's board level, but why is it board level, which might sound like quite a naive question? Is this, how much bigger and why is it so much bigger than just marketing, these trends that we're speaking about?
Oh gosh, I thought I'd have a minute to think. So I sit on a very large public board, 30,000 employees, 15 billion in annual revenue. And what's fascinating, and I think that's a challenge for all of us here at Cannes, is with agentic AI, we're getting into a world where there are going to be systems of reasoning that are individually, 1,000,000 times smarter than all of us collectively in this room. When that starts to enter the mainstream, and we're not far from that, and I'm happy to share data points as to why, what we're going to find is that the borders between functions are starting to collapse. And those lines start to blur because individual teams and employees are able to take on so much more. And it's frightening because in some cases it'll mean smaller teams. It'll mean, as the folks at Anthropic say, this is Dario and his team, it means working on the exponential because everything's moving so quickly. Public boards are starting to recognize that that's coming down the pike, and they know they're the only ones that can really push and force that change in organizations, and they feel they have that fiduciary responsibility as well to their shareholders. So that's why it's a board level conversation.
And I can quickly add, agree, yes. And I would say that, do we all remember when social came out and your CEO was sharing Instagram posts with their daughter to get approval or something of that nature? Or do they like this? Everyone is tinkering and playing with things themselves as well, just another take. And boards usually also are in a variety of other companies, or they're invested in PE, and they are excited to see what they can do to drive the business, and they're very involved. And I will just say, I think a CMO perspective of working with only Fortune 100 CMOs, the pressure is intense. It's really intense right now to move at the speed of change. And as we talked about, the structure is keeping us for success. And that's where leaders have to have the courage to also go in and say, we cannot function like this at all if this is what you want us to, if this is my remit, and they have to do that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And then very quick fire round. In this extraordinary dual web with AI web, human web, AI workflows, agents everywhere, what should remain human? And let's start with you, Lindsey, and we'll come this way.
all the work that we do to shape our brand should remain human, and we know how to do that best on the brand side and with our agency partners.
Amelia.
I would say
Took that one.
it's all right. I would say accountability, because it doesn't matter how much work you outsource to an agent, it doesn't feel the weight of the consequence of the work that it's doing. So I have an allergic reaction to humans in the loop. We talk about humans at the helm. So accountability.
Great. So we've got brand creative strategy, accountability. Shiv.
I don't know. I wish it would all stay with humans, but I think there's a very real risk that in many companies, in many industries, in many contexts, maybe none of it even will. So I don't know.
And Susan, last word.
I'm going to say creative because now, obviously, AI can create creative very quickly, but if you're just replicating what humans can do, you're not even scratching the surface. It's the dreaming what couldn't be done before and can be done now with these new tools will always have to be human.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful learning from you all. And can we please have a huge round of applause for our panelists?